Welcome to Chapter 1, Learning Disabilities and Related Disabilities, Characteristics and Current Directions. And it does a nice job on this. It's going to go a little fast. Here's the PowerPoint, and these four areas where we're going to work: the key changes in special ed, categories of learning disabilities and other related, the neurosciences of the brain, and new issues. And several of these you've heard. In SPED 100, you spend some time on special ed, especially some of the changes. And the categories will be familiar to also, even though we'll go a little more in depth. So let's start in the textbook here where I show you the layout. Here is the part of intellectual disabilities, these things under changes in special ed. And then here's the ones on different disabilities, learning disabilities and emotional disturbance, things like that, cross-cultural things. And then neuroscience, we'll do 3 sections on that. And then this part on issues and directions. So this is the cover of it also here. A teacher working with somebody. Come back here. And here's those learning objectives I grabbed out of here. Talks about what we're going to cover in Chapter 1. And throughout this text, you'll see things about the CEC, this Council for Exceptional Children, who really is a lobbying body to the federal government, and they have the most say on special ed issues. And I'm sure if they give the most money, other disabilities and conditions. A little hard to tell them apart nowadays, these different disabilities. So here's the recent changes, and this one's a big one. Of course, is the term intellectual disability is now used in place of mental retardation, and it's kind of was a quick change. The text talks about it in here. For 50 years, it was mental retardation, and suddenly it's offensive. See if I can find something about that. Felt that this was stigmatizing and demeaning, and I don't know, except for 50 years it wasn't. Now it is. And what's interesting to me is the federal government in 2010, the federal government gets involved and they decide that it's no longer appropriate, and it's really at a point where you don't want to misspeak, you don't want to use this word. I had a couple examples on campus. I had a student take me to the woodshed one day because I used this term in class and kind of got just bizarre over it. And I heard one of the other faculty take a student to the woodshed one day about using this term. And like so many things, to me, that's so overboard, but that's the culture we live in. So don't you make that mistake, but that was a big change here recently. Another thing is, it's still the largest category, but it's dropping off a little bit, and there's some reasons we'll talk about why that is. The next one is other health impaired has increased. And here's some things like that. And then the number of children identified with autism has increased. So here, our first thing here is that. And what I want you to do is go ahead and we're going to make this number 1. And each of these on the notes, I want you to put one line about something about each of these from the textbook. Okay, so that would be your first one. Then the next part on Common Core Standards, it's blank. I don't know what to say to this. I don't think the federal government has any jurisdiction over education, not according to the Constitution, but every administration wants to get involved. This one is really No Child Left Behind was a hoax. Common Core is a bigger hoax, and especially the way it's presented, it's interesting. Their thinking here, design as a result of uniform expectations, sequential. Here's the other problem I have is I didn't know we had to be uniform and sequential because they were supposed to be run by locals according to the Constitution. The states would run this, not the federal government. And then the federals say this wasn't us; it was this group of National Governors Association for best practices, teachers, parents, and community leaders, but it was all facilitated by the federal government. So we can say whatever we want, but this is a federal government program, federal government dictating the curriculum in our schools from top to bottom. But what I'm going to have you do here is you just write some things about Common Core here, and this is yours to fill in however you want. Maybe you like Common Core. I've talked to a lot of teachers that like it because it lays all out standard by standard what to do and what they need to know, and so a lot of people like this. Okay, so that's Common Core, and then let's move on here to intellectual disabilities, and I give you a little start on this here, where that came from. And then part of determining this is this adaptive behaviors, and that's practical skills such as self-care, independent skills, social skills. So adaptive behavior in the world of intellectual disabilities is how can you take care of yourself? What levels of this is based on what the student needs to be successful in that area. And again, here's another thing for intellectual disabilities. It has to begin in childhood, or it's not, if it doesn't start in childhood, it's not intellectual disabilities. It's brain injury or something like that. So this has to be present at the onset of birth here to be considered intellectually disabled or mental retardation. So don't say that. I'm just going to kind of whisper that sometimes because I don't want to get in trouble here. Students with mild intellectual disabilities can learn academic skills, but here's the thing, learning rate is slow. And if you have any background in special ed at all, you know that they have the ability to learn if it's mild, but it's a much slower process. And then the levels of disabilities are based on what support they need to function in a real world. And so I'm going to give you that here. I'm just going to call that number 3 here, and it will be this one. And your textbook may be different, but here it's here, these different ones, and maybe that's up ahead farther. Let me just see here of that. Okay, and then prevalence. You write something about the prevalence of intellectual disabilities, how it compares to others, that type of stuff. So that's going to be number 4 here. All right. Then emotional behavior disorders, and this gets a little more complicated. This is federal law, emotional disturbance. That was what it says, and now there's been some changes in 2004. And you know, IDEA, the Individual Disabilities Act, regulates all this now, and it's a federal law. Even though the feds have no jurisdiction in education, this is what they have here. And it's emotional disturbance, and this is their federal law. It cannot be explained by intellect or health factors. Difficulty in building interpersonal relationships is a big one. This is a big one, that they can't make friends. And I have some experience working with kids in this area, and it's really sad. And just an overall inappropriate types of behavior, very moody, up and down, and even though they're big and strong, real symptoms of fears, a lot of things scare them. All right, so that's what I have for you there. And now I want you to give me a line, something that separates these here: emotional disorders and behavior disorders. One for each of those. So we're going to call this, I believe we're on 5. Yep, this will be number 5, where you separate those differences on those two. A series of special ed laws. I don't know if you have to do a lot with those. Look like this. 75, 94, 142. This is going to be your number 6. Is what does that PL stand for? Okay, and I'm just going to put a number 6 here, and you tuck this to the notes. And then 86 came this one, All Handicapped Children Act. Then 1990, and these are the reauthorizations, each one of these. And then it's IDEA from 1990 on here. It actually started in 84 on, is called IDEA. All the way. Here's the most current one. It hasn't been reauthorized very well since then. It has been, but not clearly. The regs aren't out on it. So that's what that looks like. Here's the ones that affected the most impact of it. And again, you're familiar with this. You know something about a 504. Here's IDEA, and then there's a bunch of case law, and then the Common Core standards came along as part of it. All right. And then here's the story on learning disabilities. I have them back here. Students with learning disabilities, disorders of attention. And you know that, having worked with kids at all. Here's another one that's kind of common that you don't always think of, is just poor motor skill abilities, and that's where they have trouble with handwriting and those types of things. Psychological processing differences, and this is probably the most common, is they have trouble with processing things, really poor cognitive strategies, oral language difficulties, writing difficulties, math difficulties, poor social skills. Again, I'm going to ask you, I believe this is number 7, one for each of those. When I say one line for each of those in there. Here's other disabilities, for example, certification has changed, that now they want teachers to be certified in a number of areas so that they can, in South Dakota we're non-categorical, meaning anybody, you get a degree in elementary special ed from DSU or wherever, you're able to take that to a lot of places, but states like Illinois are categorical, so they're saying we're going to try and certify these special ed teachers in 7 different categories: learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, emotional behavior, orthopedic impairments, brain injury, autism, and other health impaired. So they'd have 7 classifications. And so that's a change also. Walks of life. This is big too. There's a question on the test about this. Who is this? Throughout the years, children of all walks of life, all cultures, nations, and language groups have experienced some difficulties. And this condition has been recognized for over 50 years. And then the prevalence of disabilities. Again, I'm going to ask you to talk about the prevalence, increase, decrease, 1.2 now, on categories of learning disabilities in this field. Now, learning disability is a neurological condition that interferes with a person's ability to do what? And here's where I want you to bring this from. Right here. Ability to store, process, produce information affecting the person's ability to read, write, and spell, or compute mathematics. Okay, and so I'll cover that for you. And then here's another one, move on, and also interfere with attention, memory coordination, social skills. Okay. I want you to bring that right here. We're going to call this number 8. And you're going to bring those all in there. And this term was first introduced in '63 by Samuel Kirk in the Learning Disabilities Association of America. And I used to belong to this. It's the largest for a single group here. Okay. The enigma of a youngster who encounters extraordinary difficulty in learning, of course, is not new. Throughout the years, children from all walks of life and all cultures, nations, language groups have had trouble with this. So it's very clearly addressed. And here's the prevalence again of learning disabilities. And the prevalence, you explain the number, whether it's up, down, and why, and then possible reasons. And it does a nice job here of explaining some of that. Okay. Then definitions. There's a lot of definitions here. These are the federal definitions. And this is there. It doesn't track exactly, but there's several. And this will be a little confusing for you. Okay, psychological processing disorder. So on the test, there's a question about the definition, and that's what you want to do is respond to it, the psychological processing disorder. And overall, just a difficult learning. And the thing that's unique about this one is you have to eliminate any other causes. That's why you look at hearing, vision, those types of things, physical health, because you eliminate those. And then these other agencies also have theirs. This ICLD says it's social skills. NJCLD says it's intrinsic to the individual, but IDEA kind of did an operational thing up to operationalize it. Student has a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological process involved in understanding and using, language, spoken or written, which disorder may manifest itself as imperfect ability, and here's a word that we had to know when I studied this, imperfect ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or do math calculations. Okay, that's IDEA's definition. And the student may have such conditions as perceptual disabilities, brain injury, minimal brain dysfunction, dyslexia, and developmental aphasia. And that's a lot. That's a big chunk to chew on. And the student does not achieve at the proper age and ability levels in one or more of the specific areas when provided then appropriate learning experiences, and the student has a severe discrepancy. Have you heard that term? Severe discrepancy. It goes back to this a lot, and it's changed a little bit, but this whole severe discrepancy model is based on an IQ test. You take the IQ test, you administer an IQ test, and you don't get to do that. That's done by a psychologist. I swear you and I could do it too, but they apparently are trained to administer it, and to maybe a bigger thing is to interpret the scores. Intellectual ability in one of 7 areas. And here's where I want you to get those out of there, because that's yours. You get to bring these 7 in here. There's the federal definition. Here's the 7 areas that I want you to bring in right here, and we're going to call this number 9. So you're up to 9 now. And this here too, I didn't see this in the text, but the DSM, maybe never heard of that, but this is Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, and they say these 3, and it goes figure reading disorders, writing disorders, math disorders, obviously would fit into that. So what are some common elements in the definition of learning disabilities? Well, one is neurological factors and cognitive processing factors. Okay. And again, none of this is new. The terminology may be a little off for you, but you know this. And here again is that discrepancy. So I want you to be able to answer this on the test, anything about the discrepancy model. And the discrepancy model is all about comparing achievement to ability. And ability is measured by one thing and one thing only, and that's the psychological test, the IQ test. And the achievement tests are all the tests that you learned about in assessment of formal and informal assessments. And you compare a score on one with the IQ test and say, is there a discrepancy? And this, I think it's in Chapter 2. We're going to go into that a little more in depth. But one thing I want on the tip of your tongue is the discrepancy model. And now it's kind of going out of date. And again, you have to exclude the other causes to say it's a learning disability. Okay. Let me go back to the textbook here a second. Significant definitions. Here, this was back on the definition of these other folks that came up with a definition for it. and it makes it confusing. So yeah, this here, what my intention here is to put one. I think we're at number 9. No, we're at number 10. We're at number 10 here. Just one line about each of these so you can remember them. And they're right here in the textbook. Here's each section here, section by section. Okay. And here, this gives a nice explanation of what this discrepancy model is. My textbook looks like that. And this has to be to a significant difference. Okay, and there's your exclusion of other causes. So don't bring all this in. Read this, give it a one-line summary or something like that to help you remember what that we talked about. And gifted and talented is kind of interesting. First of all, just these two things. Let's call this number 11. Just some characteristics of somebody that's gifted and has a learning disability. And it talks about some high-achieving people with that. And then this here, I'm going to call this number 12, is there's a thing on here about differences in gender in this. And of course that's always a little sticky nowadays. You start talking about gender anything, see people want to set their hair on fire. Here's the gender differences. So I want you to do something with that. Tell me some differences, some gender differences, what and why, number 12. And then it gets into these different ages, what they look different at different ages. And that goes into this next page here, different stages. Parents and professionals thought to obtain this help in the 60s is when these parents, and you'll see, this is interesting too that we don't talk enough, but a very, very high amount of things that we do today in special ed are a result of motivated parents that got the first laws passed and take things to court. A lot of special ed is shaped by court cases, and a lot of those court cases were brought by parents. Okay, and then talk about this and what are these ages. It's from 6 to 21. Do you understand that rule? That you can first be in special ed and IEP starting at age 6, and it goes through 21, and that is the age which they age out of special ed. You know this, they can be in special ed beyond high school up to age 21 to get transition services. And the number of students gradually increase from age 6 to 9. And then the majority of students in 9 to 14 age range, and the number decreases sharply 16 to 21. So I want you, first of all, give me something about each of these stages. I thought I had something here. Okay, so here, can you just do this for me? Also, 6 to 21, no, here, I start here. 6 to 9, 9 to 14, 16 to 21. Each of those, why? Why does it increase 6 to 9? Gradually increases age 6 to 9, and a majority of students. So in other words, typical special ed kid today on an IEP is between the age of 9 and 14. Okay, and then why does it drop off? So why does it pick up 6 to 14? Why is there the most 9 to 14? And why does it drop off then 16 to 21? Those three things. Let's say number 14, why on ages. And you may not know it. You just do the best you can. There's some an explanation here. Here's what that distribution looks like. Here's those ages. The most here, and then it starts to drop off dramatically here. And obviously you can explain this, but some of this other's not so much. And here's the part for this, the preschool, elementary, this comes right here. You grab how that's different for each one of those. And again, don't give me all this. A sentence or two that summarizes why this is, how those are different at those different ages, how they change in those. Okay. And then this is the part on some eminent people that have this. And so I ask you these two things. And let's see. This is number 15. Answer those two there. Who are some of these people that are known to have learning disabilities, and how did their early years of academic affect their lives or individuals? And again, this isn't new to you. You've heard of this also, of that kind of thing. Cross culture and native folks, and the big thing there is it affects everybody all across different cultures and stuff. And so you read through this and make a statement about that here. I keep forgetting where I'm at. 16, and then number 17 is in your notes. I want you to insert the clip from the textbook, and it'll be right here, like the one for. And here's what you do: you simply click on it. It should take you out to my Google Drive like this. And then you download it here, and then you will upload it in your notes in a Word document or whatever you have it in. That's how that'll work. Okay, and that each time I'll have that like that. All right. The history of this, again, I talked about Samuel Kirk already. Perceptual handicaps, brain injury. Here are some names they had for it. Was first identified as a category in special ed in 1975. 94 142 is where that came from. So that was really the birth of the first federal, even though they have none of their businesses being part of education. They made a federal law way back in 75, and they had a bunch of them before that, but that was the first one that was targeted directly at special ed, and that was where the first identified where they had this term as a learning disability, and of course it's been reauthorized a bunch since then. Okay, so there's perceptual disorder and a minimal brain dysfunction were also some terms that were used to describe that. Okay, and here's some phases of this learning disability. Again, they started with brain research and stuff, and then started to study children into the 60s, and then here was the school program, which started what year? What was the first federal law? What year? I want you to put that here. That is number 18. Number 18. I'm going to say, what year was that law, first federal law for special ed? Okay, and here's terminologies, how they've changed. Look like this. So first, and this is what happened. We didn't know what to call it. So called it brain injured, and then minimal brain dysfunction, and then ultimately Kirk started talking about this in 63. Don't worry about Kirk. I took him out of the test. There was a question on him. And then here's the one on neurosciences, right brain, left brain, differences in these things. And again, I'm going to have a heck of a time. This is number 18. And we got this one. And this is going to be number 19. Just a one line about each of these. Let me see if I can quickly show you where that is. Here's the history of the field. Look at these. These are interesting. Maybe you've seen this before, but what do you see in this picture? A young woman or an old woman? And then same with here about drawing that. That's all perceptual, processing, those types of things. And again, it's interesting here, the Common Core. And what I'm going to do is have you put this in. This is your next link on here is this one. And so I want you to put that in your notes also right there. And so I'm going to put that in here. I'm just going to say number 20 clip here, and it's the table figure 5.1. And just look at that, and it just is a nice layout of these different things. For example, here's learning disabilities represents 44.6%. Then all these here, and anything that doesn't show up here is what we call low incidence. Not many of these are higher incidence ones. So still the biggest group by far is learning disabilities, and then it goes this way around: speech, language, intellectual disabilities, and those positions have not changed here. Okay, here's some more neurosciences of the brain and its structure, and I brought this in here also. This is number 21 here, and again, one line for each of these here. Okay. So issues and directions, more inclusive placements, all these things. And so here's what I'm going to have you do is this finishes us here. Oh shoot. Let me come down here and show you where we're at here. And there's something on each of these things too. There's your brain research. This here is all part of that. And then here's the part here at the end, that last slide. And again, just give me 1 or 2 lines about each of these. Here's the more inclusive placements, and obviously the big thing is they're more than there was. You know, there's more. The trend has really been towards more kids in the regular classroom than this on response to intervention. And I know you've heard of this also, but give me 1 or 2 lines on that. And then standards for teachers and testing and stuff. That's bring me a line about that. Assistive instructional technology, a line about that. You read through that. UDI or UDL, you read about that and bring a line in about that, and there you're to this here. So this is what you end up here. 1 line for each of these. Okay. Very good. Best to you.